Hey folks, welcome to another Broken Meeple review, and today it's a bit of a heavier title in Terramara. Kind of more of a mid-weight level than I'd say heavy, I suppose, to be more accurate. But this is a Euro game, worker placement, where you take control of a BC tribe in sort of Italian hills and villages. And the idea is that you are sending your workers out to get resources, refine them into better resources, and build these artifact cards, which are things that give you special abilities and points. All the while that you are leveling up on these 3 different tracks: military, culture, and travel. And by doing so, you'll unlock new abilities, get special bonuses, score points, make yourself better or worse in the game. There's all sorts of different things that these tracks will do, and you've got to maybe focus on one, do a balance of others. It may sound pretty generic, but there's a twist here. The worker placement in here is done a bit differently. Yes, you have a selection of workers and you have a big chieftain worker. The chieftain allows you to go to spots that someone else has already taken, but you can still do so if you have more military than the other player. But a space can only ever have a maximum of 2 workers on it, and if the chieftain's the first one, it's locked entirely. So there's a slight twist there. But the biggest twist is that the spaces you have are modular in every game, and you have the top 2 rows available easily in your first round. But every other one below is also open, and it's not quite to the same levels of complexity as Feast for Odin. I mean, Feast for Odin has more spaces and much more complex actions, whereas this one is more like, this one gets you a leather and 2 hides. This one gets you a stone and allows you to refine 2 stone into ashlar. And, there's various very simple spaces, but there's a lot of different combinations. But the idea is when you place a worker out, you get the bonus instantly. But at the end of the round, you only return the workers on the top space, and any space that is up to the level of the round tracker. So the round tracker will tick down the spot, and the action boards are laid out in rows down alongside that tracker. And the idea is that if you place them out on a space where it's on this row or before, you get the worker back at the end of the round. But if you were to place a worker somewhere down here, it's stuck there until the round catches up with the worker and then they come back. Yeah, it's a slight thematic disconnect that, you get the bonus instantly even though you've sent them out to faraway lands, but that was part of the designer diary where they chose to do that because to do it otherwise just got too fiddly. Right? I got no problem about you streamlining games if it improves the game. But, other than that, it's quite a thematic thing that you send the worker out afar, and so it's longer before they get back to you. Because the whole concept of the game is that you are travelling to, the Faux Mountains, I think they're called, and the River Po and, the Italian Alps mountains. And it just works nicely as a cool thematic worker placement concept. But other than that, it's familiar territory. You have multiple rounds where you use workers, not your clansmen, we'll get onto that later, to refine your resources. The artifact cards will give you cool abilities, and just going on the spaces themselves will allow you to do cool things. You might even have a character ability that you can, switch between the young and the experienced side, and it either gives you a cool ability or another way of scoring points. Once 5 rounds are done, you total up all the points from various means, and of course, the winner, the one with the most.
Of course!
So Quinid Games has got a bit of a record, reputation, for doing a lot of medium weight to heavy games, and certainly making them more about, these thinky Euros, but also definitely making them look good. Them aggro that I haven't played yet. I'd like to play aggro actually. That's on my wish list. But looks really complicated, looks really heavy. But it looks gorgeous on the board, doesn't it? All that artwork. And a lot of their games have this. They did Firenze recently, and it's like, good, that's a nice looking game as well, even though that was a straight up reprint. This one, I love this one. Oh yes, drool. It is a gorgeous game, and the reason for that is because of one name, Michael Menzel. You get Michael Menzel to do artwork on your game, it's gonna look good. And not just in terms of, this artwork is nice and colourful and it looks good, but if you've ever seen a board done by Michael Menzel, Pillars of the Earth, Legends of Andor, stuff like that, they look nice. They're colourful, they've got little Easter eggs in them, like seeing people doing their thing, little cat in a bush somewhere. It's just a really good spectacle to look at. And what he does do with his boards, he makes them uniform in the sense that with this, because you've got the rows of actions that flip over as the game goes on, you'd think, oh great, now the landscape's not going to match. No, it always matches. It fades from like one terrain type into another, so it doesn't look like it's like desert and then immediately mountains. You know, it fades naturally into it, and it just creates a nice immersive looking board. And the board itself is already quite, you know, imposing on the table, because you've got this frame with all the tracks on it, and in it you've got all these modular rows with the action spaces. So it looks the business. The tiles, those tiles with the rows are great. The card quality's good. You know, the graphic design has some hit and miss issues now and again with iconography. There's quite a fair bit to absorb, but it doesn't take more than a few peeks into the rulebook to find out what some of those iconography bits are. Although there are some occasions where you might be looking at a card and going, even with the iconography, I'm not entirely certain what this card does, and it may require you to check an FAQ. Those times I found rare. I didn't have to do it very often. Some people are out there slagging off the rulebook saying it's horrible. I don't know where they're coming from on this. I learnt the game just fine from the rulebook, and occasionally I had to go, hang on, let me just check the iconography. I think it probably does that, but let's just check an FAQ to be certain. Oh yeah, it was what I thought. Generally what you think the card does is what it does, but you can check it if you like. They're very quick on Board Game Geek on the forums to respond to queries, so you know, you will easily find an answer. But where you hear people saying the rulebook's bad, I've read bad rulebooks, I'm sorry. You know, I will read this over anything that GMT ever sticks in their games, for example. It's like, I will easily play the game from this rulebook. I didn't have a problem. Maybe it's because I've played a lot of games, I don't know. Some of you may struggle a bit, but just be aware that there may be the occasional graphic design question where you'll be asking, huh? You know, just a little bit often. But with this though, I love those tiles with the spaces. You know, I mean, the twist with worker placement is great. There's loads of worker placement games in my collection. There's tons that are out there, you know, and it's difficult to make worker placement unique. Architects of the West Kingdom is a good example of how to do a decent twist. This is another good twist. The idea that your workers come out at different times, so people have different numbers of workers at different times. That's a cool thing. And I love the fact that those action spaces are modular. Every single game, you have so many tiles in the level 1 tier, level 2 tier, and level 3 tier. So they've got to go in a certain like uniform fashion. But there's a lot in each tier, and you only pick like 4 from each tier for each particular row, and well, maybe even only 2 for one tier. And it's just like, there's loads to pick from. And as you choose each tier, it's going to have different scoring opportunities from outposts, which are places where your caravan can visit in order to pop a flag down and score points for a certain criteria. There's different action spaces. Some resources may become more scarce, more common than others, and that affects how the game plays. It just makes every game feel different in the spaces without making it feel phenomenally different. You know, like you've got to learn entire new concepts. No, you've just got to look at it and go, there's a lot of iron ore on this table. So if the cards are going to cost iron ore, maybe I should focus on those a bit, you know, or maybe I should hog the spaces that aren't iron ore to make life difficult for the others who are only going for that. Who knows, you know. There's other things you just got to think of, not brain-burning aspects, but it makes each game feel just a little bit unique to keep the games fresh. So far, we're on to a good worker placement twist, and we're on to a good, you know, component quality. Is the gameplay fun in general? Definitely yes. This is going to be, I don't know where it will end up, but I will be hard pressed to think this doesn't end up in my top 10 of the year. It's been just, if there's one thing about Quinnet games I like, is that a lot of their games tend to be relatively smooth, even though they might be complex and have stuff to do. This is one of the smoothest Euro games I have played this year. Yes, as I mentioned, you've got the occasional time you might have to check a bit of graphic design, but otherwise, in terms of the gameplay itself, plot the worker out, get the action, then buy an artifact card. Do this, get the action, maybe reserve an artifact card if you can. You get a track movement, move down the tracks. You get a resource, get the resources. Workers, refine into this. You can do, they have a structure in the round, but you do it at your own pace. But everything just feels smooth. It feels elegant. I don't feel at any point, other than those minor occasions of checking a bit of graphic design, where the game grinds its gears or feels clunky between rounds. You You know, you finish a round and it's like you just do a little bit of cleanup and then it instantly just sort of melds into the next round and you just carry on going. It doesn't feel like you've got to stop the game like, for a little bit and then it's like, hang on, let me just do this massive cleanup. Okay, good. Oh, come on, green light. Come on, go on. And then you get going. This one just flows really smoothly. Game takes anywhere between, say, 90 minutes to 2.5 hours, depending on the number of players and the level of AP you have. Typically, it tends to be about a 2-hour game if you've got players who aren't too slow, but you do have a reasonable amount to teach, although not tons to teach. I mean, if you've played Euro games before, this isn't gonna like burn your brain in new concepts. And there's actually some similarities I can compare to things like Gentes. You know, Gentes with those cards at the bottom, and you could only access so many, and the cards gave you different abilities and that. This is similar. The cards are along the bottom and you can't access them unless you've travelled along the Culture River track a certain distance. You don't need these weird workers on tracks in order to buy the cards like in Gentes, but it's that kind of thing. And people have drawn that similarity when they've been teaching them the game and they go, oh, is that like Gentes then? And it's like, fair enough, that helps you learn the game, then go for it. But it's not difficult to explain. You just go through, you know, what the iconography is, explain the 3 different tracks, how the cards work, round sequence, go. You know, it really isn't that difficult compared to a lot of other Euro games like, you know, mid-weight and heavy category that can take a lot longer to teach and get the grips with. You know, so looks great, smooth gameplay, the choices are interesting because you've got all those different action spaces and you're thinking, right, well, hang on, I need a lot of this now, but do I send them out into the future because I don't want to get them back for a while, but that would be a good acceleration. You know, it's not like sending them out into the future, into the future, it's not Back to the Future.
Safe and sound now, back in good old 1955.
1955?
It's not like sending them out to a further spot is bad ever. It's not like, oh, I've got nowhere to do, alright, I'll send them out there. No, these are good action locations. And as the game progresses, they flip over and unlock these different spaces, a scoring space and a new space that's dependent on how far you've travelled. Again, very thematic. But those spaces open up and then suddenly you're able to access those more powerful locations and get your workers back. So it definitely ramps up in the progression for starting off with fairly simple actions and then ramping up to the more really lucrative actions. But you can grab a lucrative action early on and it's not a bad decision to make. Granted, if you send all 5 of them out there and you've got no workers for the next 2 to 3 rounds, then yeah, you may have made a mistake, but sending 1 or 2 out there is not the end of the world if you can make good use of what you get. The character cards and starting resources you can either play to a basic setup, or I think maybe your first game should be a basic setup, but after that you will basically ignore the basic setup and use the starting draft, because the character abilities, I was a bit hesitant on them at first, but I grew to really like them. They essentially give you a young and experienced character. The young side, it gives you an ability, a bonus, like you move an extra space in the culture track when you move, or you get to, every round, get 2 resources. You know, very simple, but cool young abilities, and they cover lots of different aspects of Path to Victory. But what you can do at the start of a round is flip it to the adult side, where now, for a reason linked to what your previous ability was, you now can score victory points. But you can't switch back to young, obviously. You can't regress age. But you have to make a decision during the game, like, am I going to stick with the cool ability that accelerates my game, or am I going to stick with this scoring opportunity that gives me something to aim for? And should I do this later? Should I flip in on the first turn and say, you know what, screw the ability, I'm just going to gear for this, and therefore I want points, points, points. It really does unlock some good ways to tailor your own path to victory. And there's a lot of paths to victory here. I mean, you've got spamming artifact cards, you've got the military track, the caravan track, the culture track, whatever your character ability has, you've got the 4 outposts that give you different scoring opportunities. You could happily just ignore some of those and use the spaces on the board, on the tiles, where you simply trade in 2 resources and get 5 points. Munchkin that every round, you know, or munching that as often as possible, and that'll give you a fair amount of points compared to other players who are trying to buy these cards. And the cards that you buy, they come in different tiers, they cycle through, there's different paths to victory that open up with those, like some cards are just flat out points, some give you cool bonuses on the track, some give you resources, like new actions you can take, some even maybe like, 5 points for every set of 4 artifact cards that you have, you know, then great, I'll spam artifact cards. There's a lot of different paths, and I have tried many different ones, and they feel quite balanced. I haven't come across a strategy that feels like it's broken on all, like, as all get out. You know, the bonus tiles that you get along the tracks, you know, they're random every game. They can change whether you want to go down a track or not. And obviously, all 3 tracks are important, even though you might focus on one for points. Because if you don't move far enough down the caravan track, you're missing out on scoring opportunities, you're missing out on the caravan spaces as they open up, and the bonus tiles could be cool. But if you don't go along the culture track, then you don't have access to those project cards, whereas others might do. So you might think, oh, I really want that card, I really want that card, come on, come on, come on. Oh, someone bought it. You know, and there's another worker you can get along that track, as well as a discounting card and the ability to reserve cards. These are handy things to have. If you don't go along the river, you're going to lose out. But then military, if you don't have military, then not only are you unable to go to spaces where someone else is already there, unless you use your chieftain, you run the risk of being the victim of a raid that someone can initiate as an action space, where based on what class of military you're in, it's like a band of spaces basically, whatever section you're in, they get to steal resources off you. You get to pick what you give them, but if you're in, like, say, the lowest military class, you might have to give them 1 resource for every 3 you own. But then if you're in the same class as them, it might be 1 for every 5, 1 for every 6. This doesn't cripple players. No, it's not like, oh my god, this is a supreme take that. Although if somebody is going high into military, you'd better expect that the raid is coming. It's gonna happen. But it's to deter people from stockpiling resources. So you just have an incentive to spend the things when you get them, rather than hoard a ton of them. And if you do hoard them, then you're kind of just asking for it, really, and it's your own fault. So all the tracks feel important. Nothing in this game feels like an afterthought. It's not like somebody just bolted in a mechanic for the sake of mechanics. And yes, I know a few games are going to think about that, but we won't go into that right now. But everything, it just feels smooth and elegant. I really love this Euro. It is one of my favourite midweight Euros I have ever played. Just smooth, elegant, looks the part, good variety, good path to victory. Rules, minor quip with the rules in the sense of some of the iconography and, you know, the odd FAQ bit. That is a small gripe, you know, and certainly, it only goes up to 4 players. Good, it doesn't need to be 5 or 6 players. There is a neutral player rule, though, for 2 and 3 players. That's a little bit of an irk, but to be honest, I find myself playing this more with 4 players because of the tension for the spaces and the easier setup. But I'll play this with 2 or 3 players fine. You just have to accept that there's a neutral player rule that you have to learn, and that may put some people off. Personally, I don't mind. It's a way to make the game scale, because you need the spaces to be tense, and if you didn't do any player scaling, then 2-player would just feel too loosey-goosey, and 4-player would be the only way to play. So 2, 3, and 4 is fine. I do wish it had a solo mode. Sadly, it doesn't. You know, it's not something I dock a point for these days, but I just wish it had a solo mode. But yeah, if you're hoping it has one, sorry, not going to happen. But yeah, I really can't think of anything major negative to say about this game. I knew nothing about this game before Essen. I saw it at the press preview, and I looked at it and I thought, that's beautiful. I want to know more about this game. And this is at a time period where I'm trying to look at more of Quinid Games' stuff. You know, some of their Euros may not have a theme that go to me, but they look nice on the table. And if they're anything like this, I want to play them. I want to play Agra. I want to play Lustanza or whatever it was called, even though it looks like a theme I'm not interested in. I want to try more of their stuff. They're coming out with stuff that is interesting to me, if nothing else. So, yeah, somebody please show me a game of Agra. I really would like to play that in the next convention. HandyCon's coming up. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But, or maybe I'll just buy it myself in January, who knows. But I'd like to try Agra. But for now, Terramara. Love this one. So glad I came across it. I was hooked. I demoed it literally 3 rounds. We just played 3 out of the 5 rounds in a demo, and it was instant. Yep. I wish I could have got it as a review copy, but I didn't. I bought it with my own money at Essen. They barely know me. I mean, Quinid Games doesn't really know what I do on the blog, unfortunately, but maybe they will after this review. But definitely loved it. Absolutely love this game. This is a solid 10 out of 10 for me. The only negatives I have are minor gripes with certain aspects of the iconography and graphic design. But again, I didn't have as much problems as other people out there did. I feel that some people have kind of maybe just made it a little bit too much for it, or like hyped it up a little bit too much in terms of what the rulebook's like. Personally, aside from the occasional check, which, as I say, go onto Board Game Geek on the forums, you will find your answer or get a response within minutes. It's a solid game, not enough to dock it down by a point. Love it, 10 out of 10. If you like midweight Euros that are smooth and worker placement with an interesting twist that don't feel like generic worker placement games, then you have got to check out Terramara, one of my favorites of the year, and that's saying something. So, you know, as much as 2019 has not been the best year ever, the games that have come out that I've really liked have been really, really good. And this is another one of them. So that's it for me and Terramara from Quinnet Games. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple review. And for now, regardless of whether your worker has been sent out into the hills or has actually been gone to the future, it's still only a game. Take care, and I'll see you next time.